Hello, and welcome to the next edition of our Thought Leadership podcast series. Today, we are honored to have with us Mr. Santhosh KC, heading leadership development at Infosys, head of the Infosys Leadership Development Institute. Santhosh has had a long and distinguished career spanning more than 26 years. He started his foray into the corporate world at the turn of the century in 2000, and today in 2026, after going through multiple organizations, he builds people capability at the leader level at Infosys. Welcome to our podcast, Santosh.
Thank you so much, John. Really appreciate the platform and the opportunity, and looking forward to this conversation.
Santosh, so you are driving leadership development at one of India's most admired organizations. Looking back, what has been the most formative moments in your own leadership journey, and what made you move from other line functions finally into a leadership development role?
I mean, very powerful question. First question upfront, John. As one could imagine, um, 26 years long stint, and I've had diverse experiences, and it's not been a linear, traditional career journey. If anybody looks at my profile, that'll be very obvious. So it's also obvious that my career has been inspired and influenced by many formative moments. But more importantly, many people who have sparked those moments, who have enabled those moments, and who've created those formative moments for me that has helped shape my career. And they include my trainers, my managers, some of my well wishers who've nudged me at various times, some of them who opened some doors for me, some of them who showed some doors that could take me to different experiences, could lead me to different experiences, and some who just inspired me with the doors they opened and the paths they traversed. So I've drawn from many such people who I've been blessed to have in my life, professional life and personal life. Many of them have helped shape the career. I must also admit very openly that my career journey has not been the result of very deliberate or long term planning. Many of the roles that I did were not really an outcome of long term planning, very deliberate movements. Rather, I just took on what I thought at that moment really interested me, led me to things that I wanted to experience. Being open to experimentation, to new learning and new experiences in large parts and measures have shaped my career journey, John.
Fantastic. You would know that I also started my career at Infosys. I'm very
We
fond of,
have a
yeah, and I think once an Infosys, always an Infosys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I keep coming back here.
So today, when you're heading ILI, what do you see as the core mandate at ILI? Is it preparing for the next 1-2 years, or do you operate with a 3-year horizon, or do you actually look at a 5 to 10 year horizon?
It is not an either or, John. I think the mandate is really to create a leadership system that helps the organization in the present, making sure that we have a strong slate of leaders and that they have everything that they need in order to be the best leadership selves. We also have to have an eye on the future, and particularly in this AI world where the future is really uncertain, you want to be able to create a system that continues to produce leaders who could take the organization forward,
Mm-hmm.
term as well as long term.
Mm-hmm.
So we operate across all these horizons, and that's clearly the expectation as well from
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. So it's very much of a today, tomorrow, and beyond. Maybe 3 horizons.
Absolutely. Look, I know that many people would say we don't even know what is coming, the next year. So how do you even plan to build a system, 5 years from now? But my point is, unless you at least make an attempt and build a system based on the realities of today and constantly keep changing, adjusting, refining, you will never stop.
Yeah.
So we clearly operate across all three horizons.
So how do you balance the imperative of strategic long-term planning with the imperative of agility and adaptability?
So you need to have a core which is built on solid foundations and fundamentals of development. But they don't change. Some of them are really timeless. So you have to have a system that has that at its core, which is really solid. Foundations and fundamentals are really solid, on which you can keep building layers, almost like Lego blocks. And those Lego blocks can be moved. These modular Lego blocks of development,
Mm.
you have the ability to shift them quickly, move them quickly, combine them, recombine them in different ways based on changing needs. So where we are today is that we have, over the years, Infosys, like it does not just in leadership system, but every single system in the organization has got very solid foundation built over years of rigor, of standards of excellence, built on expertise and experiences of people. And we now have multiple Lego blocks of different aspects of development that we have the ability to change, to reorder, to recombine, to decompose, which helps us to respond to changing times very quickly. The other advantage that we have today, which we didn't have maybe a few years ago, is AI-led technologies have really democratized access to the power of tech that allows us to do this and be extremely responsive and agile. And as I say, able to manage and balance both precision as well as scale. It is no longer precision or scale. We can operate at both with great levels of confidence.
Today, while you're at Infosys, how do you see all the changes that are happening around the world impacting the business landscape at Infosys? And therefore, how do you see it impacting your talent landscape? What has been your view on what's happening in the last maybe couple of years? And it'll also be good if you can just talk a little bit about the next 2, 3 years. How do you see it playing out?
Sure, John. What the changing world order is doing to the world in general, society and organizations is sort of pretty evident. Of course, Infosys as well. The entire business, the IT industry, the technology industry, the technology services industry are all equally impacted. And I don't think there are definitive answers apart from the fact that there is a need to adapt, to adopt, and to evolve. And different organizations, including us, we are all rapidly adapting and adopting to this changing landscape. Whether it is the business model, whether it is the way we build solutions, whether it is the way we take solutions to our clients, whether it is our talent model and talent landscape, everything is going through fundamental shifts. A very clear articulation of our AI strategy is out there. That's a reflection of how we are moving ahead in this AI world, being AI first ourselves and helping our clients also become AI first. Obviously, it goes without saying that it'll have some fundamental ramifications and consequences for development of people in general and leadership also in particular, right? And the way I see this is, if I just simplify into a frame of reference, right? I think the first thing that we are noticing at ILI, the Leadership Institute, my colleagues and I, is that like everything else, there is a decomposition and recomposition of this whole skills, capabilities, etc. that is happening. So what AI is doing is, like technology skills and other skills, even in leadership, there is a fundamental decomposition of certain leadership capabilities into its foundational building blocks, etc. And there is recomposition. So there is higher order, newer order kind of capabilities that are required as AI and associated technologies take over some of the other tasks. And that is true. So one of the primary focus of development is, how does development happen in this world of decomposition and recomposition? What's important to be built? That is number one. Even at leadership, it is true. The second is, we strongly believe that development is now really multi-edged, right? It's not a flat surface. You can't operate at the same level and offer a single layer of development, approach and development dimension to your leaders. And you have different leaders operating at different edges of leadership, and the leadership system has to recognize that, and development also has to happen at those different edges. So we are calling this multi-edged development. And again, technology allows us to deploy development at these different edges very effectively, which earlier would have been a bit of an issue. The third thing is, as I said earlier, we operate across all time horizons. It's not just today, but tomorrow and beyond. So you have to evolve beyond principles and processes. You have to build a system. So our focus today is really building a very robust leadership system that is based on a very strong foundation of timeless development principles, but recognizes these changing needs of leaders to be at the cutting edge of performance, to be at the cutting edge of disruption, and enables them to operate at those edges. So creating a system, building a system that allows us to do that. And earlier, as I said, precision and scale, which is deep personalization at scale, was a dichotomy. It was always difficult. It was either or. And as you know, Infosys is large. We have 1,000+ senior leaders. So we have to operate at scale. But today we are able to do that much more confidently with the help of newer technologies that are available at our disposal to be very precise at an individual level, but we continue to operate at scale the way our business needs.
Right. So when it comes to how AI is changing the landscape in the future, right? We have so many different scenarios that could likely occur. You have scenarios all the way from people saying that AI is not sustainable and the hallucinations will not go away. And therefore, one end of the spectrum, you almost have that this becomes more of a fad. On the other end of the spectrum, you have what is known as AI singularity, where AI is going to take over almost everything. And then you also have scenarios in between, mainly guided for the IT industry by two, moving axes, right? One axis is how fast enterprises will adopt AI. The other axis is how fast the IT industry will reinvent itself, right? And depending on which axis moves faster, either AI could erode the business model of tech companies, or tech companies could do very well, but they could be slowed down by the fact that, enterprises do not adopt AI, right? So there are so many different factors out there. So, how are you seeing this landscape, and how are you planning the talent approach and the leadership development approach for this?
So, in John, without responding to specifics, as you said, the possibilities are immense, right? And we don't know what we don't know. What we know for sure is that this change and the rapidity of change and the rapidity of disruption and adoption, etc., is going to continue. That is not going to stop. So, that is the reality. So, the singular truth and consequence for development and for leadership is that leaders have to be able to navigate whatever possibilities become certainty. The possibilities of today, some of them will fructify and become certainties of the business. Some of them will continue to operate at the edges of uncertainty and ambiguity. Some new levels and access of ambiguity will emerge. But this combination of certainty and uncertainty will continue to exist. It was always there, but I think the ratios have changed. The level of ambiguity at which you have to operate today is maybe higher. The level of unknowns that you have to operate today is maybe higher, right? So that's the reality. So development has to help leaders frame their mental models, approaches, their decision making, and their leadership styles to deal with this and to deal with this as effectively as possible. So, thinking of ways and means in which you could help leaders deal with this current reality and the continuing evolution of this reality is, I think, the focus. Now, we don't have silver bullets. And that is where our strong belief is that instead of looking at developing meta capabilities, while those meta capabilities would be there, which are in line with meta trends and mega trends, what will matter is if we decompose them into its constituent elements of things that leaders need to do. Example is sense making. A distinguishing characteristic of the times that we are living in and the times that I foresee coming is just the level of noise that will keep increasing. Information is not asymmetrical today, it is the other way around, right? It's an overload. So, how do you sieve out the right signals, and how do you even determine which signals to pay attention to, how much weight to give to them? How do you weigh these different signals when you are making a decision? When you're calibrating your own models to make decisions? If we can sharpen this, strengthen this, and allow leaders to reframe, retest their models continuously, that will serve the leaders really well, no matter which axis shifts and where the world goes to. And leaders will find themselves equipped enough to be able to manage whatever paradigms come their way. That's how we are looking at it. We are not trying to find the perfect answers of tomorrow because we know there is uncertainty there. We are not even trying to predict exactly what is going to happen, because if that doesn't happen, everything that you have thought to be true and everything that you will put together in expectation of that will get nullified. So you operate in a paradigm where you go back to the foundations, the founding attributes, the foundational attributes, and then build to sort of strengthen them.
So one of the very interesting approaches that we have seen is that when there's a lot of uncertainty and noise, one of the coping mechanisms that some leaders have adopted is to just filter out all the noise and just operate as if that noise is never there at all. That's something that we've seen as very interesting. And also look at just run business as if things are not really changing so much day on day, but operate with a more calmer and steadier kind of mindset.
Yeah. Look, to us, and that's something that I see leadership development or any development has to provoke leaders, to help leaders think. Neither can you be like an ostrich that buries its head in the sand, hoping that the world is not changing, when in fact the world around it is changing. There is no denying that. Rather, we have to reframe that as you have to find your moments of calm. You are able to take in all the noise that is there, but be able to read the signals that are stronger and test them against your own models, your own hypothesis, and then find clarity in that clutter. And for that, you need some amount of peace, centeredness. You'll have to find moments to do that. But to operate continuously in the assumption or with the mental model that nothing across you, around you is changing, that may not serve you well as a leader as well, because then you are missing out signals that truly are important. And the fact that things are changing, and you may operate then through a frame that is completely irrelevant to the frames that are needed to respond to the changing times. So helping leaders think about these different paradigms is the biggest power and focus of development, according to me. These are not prescriptive solutions. These are not point solutions, unlike earlier, because things are changing, so things are dynamic. So going back to the foundations of how we help leaders find the balance to operate is going to be the focus, John.
Absolutely. So, how, from a methodology perspective, how are you facilitating this developmental paradigm? Do you see methodologies themselves changing from what they used to be? It'll be good to get your view on what all different approaches you are leveraging to help leaders in adapt to this world of change.
Yeah, I think methodologies are changing, and I think newer and newer methodologies will emerge. Used to be a time when nobody could think of development beyond classroom, right? And virtual took over, and then COVID just accelerated it, made that a norm, right? That was a pivotal movement. And then there are many other forms of learning that have emerged over time. I'm sure with the way technology is progressing and technology is getting democratized, which means, unlike the earlier era of development of technology, only it was elitist before it became available, before it became commoditized. And the time period between when the technology was elitist to when it became democratized used to be many years. But now those many years have been compressed into a few months, or right at the beginning, technology is democratized and is available. So in that era, I'm pretty sure it can be leveraged to create newer methodologies of learning. Now, the single biggest shift and possibility that I'm seeing is, as you would imagine, you are a development professional yourself, John, that the biggest challenge with learning or development used to be that moments of learning or moments of development were separated from moments of performance. It has always been the challenge of learning, and you could call it transfer of learning, application of learning, and whatever it is. But the fact is that moments of learning used to be many degrees. There used to be many degrees of separation between moments of learning to moments of performance.
True.
And that led to the lack of clear alignment between these two, right? A direct line of impact between these two.
Cup and the lip.
Cup in the lip, yeah. And many phrases that we use, this used to be some of the biggest challenges in learning. And over the years, different methods, different methodologies have been tried. How do we get people to practice projects, assignments, on the job? Many different things have been tried, but still the degrees of separation used to exist between moments of performance when leaders really needed to operate at a certain level, and then moments of learning that used to be very separate. I think the biggest change and opportunity that I see is compressing moments of performance and moments of learning through technology and bringing them as close together as possible, and eventually that dissolving completely and collapsing and converging through technology, where a lot of the learning will happen in the moments of performance. And that then is the true power of development. I think we are going there. We have now simulations that used to take many years to create. And by the time the simulations used to be deployed, the context changed. enParadigm, your own firm being at the forefront of creating these simulations. We all now experience that with AI, with the power of technology, creating simulations, that time period is now gotten compressed. And the power of creating simulations which mimic real life is great, enormous, right? And you could deploy them very quickly. Now, that compresses the degree of separation between moments of performance and moments of learning, but it is still simulated environment. I think simulation itself will evolve and continue to evolve over a period of time to a level where it mimics moments of performance almost exactly and then dissolves into actual moments of performance. So it's available whenever a leader needs to perform something where they need to bring their learning and their unique capabilities at that edge when it is required. That, I think, is the singularity moment of development as
Yeah.
you make.
Yeah. So, I've been thinking about this quite a lot, Santosh. And like what you said, right? That one way to facilitate learning is to take people into a simulated or a virtual environment, give them very realistic scenarios, but it's still a virtual environment, right? But the singularity moment for this industry is definitely coming where in the future, your tools will maybe shadow you or they will listen in to what you're actually doing on the field and then maybe give you nudges, guides, prompts, or they may throw up introspective moments. Hey, you know what? You just took this decision. Do you think it was the most optimal decision? Or do you think you could have looked at it differently? While you're actually taking real decisions for real world context.
Absolutely.
So I'm very excited about learning technology evolving to this level. At the same time, there is a small concern I have. At that moment, will people feel that they're learning at all? Or will they feel that, no, I'm just performing and I'm just getting a few nudges here and there? What is your view on this?
Yeah, interesting paradigm. Now, the question to really ask is if that singularity truly arrives, are we learning for the sake of learning or
Mhm.
is learning for the cause of something, right? Either personal or professional,
True.
right? And I strongly believe that you learn in order to experience something new and then to live that experience,
To live the experience. Yeah.
right? Ultimately, you want to be able to live that experience. You have knowledge, you want to be able to use the knowledge in some way that makes you feel better, that makes you experience life in a better way,
Mhm.
right? That makes you experience life the way you want to experience it.
Mhm.
Ultimately, any experience, whether it is learning experience, lived experience, anything that you have, right? Is like a collection of nuggets that you have. But ultimately, you're hoping that you'll be able to leverage them in order to create a better lived experience for yourself. So I know it's a bit philosophical,
Yeah.
but if that happens, you don't need to then say, does learning continue to exist for the sake of it? Or we say it is nirvana, where learning is so embedded and so ingrained that it allows you to experience life the way you want to, whether as a professional or a person in that moment when you need it the most. You're not even realizing it, but we are helping you grow. We are helping you experience different things in a more effective way. How we are doing it, if it is happening in the background without even you realizing it, is fantastic. I mean, it's a bit scary to imagine then how will you prove the value, the work, and so on and so forth. But as I say, sometimes absence of something talks louder than the presence of something. So if we are able to reach that level, then I would imagine that that's great instead of being bad.
Very, very interesting thoughts, Santosh. Thank you so much for sharing them. So, when it comes to now driving the future of learning, given the future of AI, the future of the IT industry, and the future of talent, what do you value most in partners when co creating or designing solutions for you? Where do you see value coming from outside? Because I'm sure Infosys itself has a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, and a wealth of methodologies as well.
Absolutely, John. As we are realizing with business that creating and leveraging a very robust partner ecosystem is
Mhm.
essential for success. It's a non negotiable in today's world because there are so many different dimensions of technology that are out there. In
Mhm.
order to create the best solution possible for your clients, for your customers, it is important to put join forces and then to create that solution that works the best. And that is true for us as well. We may have a wealth of experience, we have a great understanding of our own context, but we've always cherished working with partners. As you know, we have a great ecosystem of partners that we work with, and I think that'll continue. But to your question of what would we value, I think we would value partners who would come up with very novel and sometimes even disruptive ways of approaching development, as I said, takes us, helps, challenges our frame of thinking about development in a very constructive manner, and then co-designs with us that vision that takes the development journey forward meaningfully. So somebody who's really an intellectual partner as well, not just a content partner. I really believe that content is already commoditized in many ways. Design of learning programs is already commoditized. So, what would you value? You would value that intellectual drive and intellectual partnership. And when I say intellectual, as I said, it's really about reframing the thought process, reframing the models, reframing paradigms, and challenging them, and being willing to walk with us and partner with us in that trajectory, because we are pushing ourselves to do, and we would value partners who would do that as well with us. The second one is and there are only two really. The second one is somebody who could own the outcomes along with us and not just contribute intellectually, not just challenge intellectually, and not just co-design and co-create, but also co-own. Because a partnership, an equal partnership, is where it is through and through, and not a partnership that drops off at some stage and somebody else holds the other end independently. Right. So I'd rather have partners who walk the entire journey and co-think, co-design, and co-own. Those are the three paradigms.
I think great. I think co-create, co-think, co-own. I think that's a very, very good way to summarize what you just said now. Finally, from an outcome perspective, how do you measure impact? Because like you said, if the singularity moment is approaching and if you see that the traditional, in a sense, silo between a learning environment and a work environment is dissolving, right? And learning really starts coming to the flow of work. Then how do you measure impact? How do you help the business also understand where value is being added and what could not have happened if not for the learning approach and the learning methods?
Yeah, that question remains, and it is, the holy grail of all development, and that's still there. We are working on a few hypotheses ourselves of what success means in this new world. We don't have, to be very honest, we don't have a silver bullet. We don't have all the answers, but we are experimenting with things that we believe will help us get closer, as I said, to that moment where moments of performance and moments of learning come as close together as possible, and leaders are able to operate effectively by leveraging everything that they are experiencing through the learning and through the development. And examples could be in the way they make decisions. And if the process of making decisions in this hyper disrupted world and this hyper noisy world becomes better, and if leaders can testify that yes, my decision making process has strengthened, has become better, I'm becoming more confident making decisions in this disruptive world, I think that's a great outcome, because a leader at the end of the day is really a function of the multitudes of decisions that he or she makes. And if we are able to enable that process to be stronger, sharper, that's a great success. So stuff like that. And there are a few other things that we are thinking about, that we are experimenting with. And that's where really our own newer way of looking at leadership system, and hopefully with the right partners coming to work together, including enParadigm, we would reach that moment sooner than later.
Okay, great. So I'm going to just wind up this lovely interview with a few rapid fire questions for you
Okay.
to provoke some thought and also, there are no easy answers. Still, I'm going to maybe request you to still take a call and, take a stance if that's okay with you.
Okay. I'll
Okay.
try.
Okay. So, one leadership trait that is overrated today.
Strategy.
Strategy. Okay, that's a great answer. One leadership trait that will become non-negotiable in the next 5 years.
Judgment.
Okay. One capability AI will replace in leaders.
I think innovative thinking.
Innovative thinking?
Yeah.
Are you talking about truly innovative thinking, or the ones around the edges of how human beings have already defined knowledge?
So when you say innovative thinking, really throwing out and imagining possibilities
Mhm.
you couldn't have imagined,
Okay.
you could have tech do that for you and help you reach edges that you may not have reached. So I truly believe it'll democratize
Mhm.
innovative thinking.
Mhm.
And what would then become valuable is what do you do with that edge thinking? And that then becomes the decision making, the judgment, and everything else that leaders would be called upon to do.
Okay. One book, idea, or framework that has influenced your thinking the most.
For the longest time, Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow by
Okay.
Daniel.
All right. Okay. Type 1 and type 2 thinking.
Yes.
All right. And finally, one moment in your career that has shaped your leadership identity.
There have been many sort of difficult to push, but I think uh, the biggest one has been entrusted with the responsibility to do this role. The opportunity came because the organization had choices, and still being entrusted with this, it's been a few years, has really helped me shape my own thinking and my own evolution as a leader.
That was really sharp and honest, Santosh. Thank you so much for sharing so much in this conversation. It was a lovely interaction. I hope you also enjoyed this conversation as much as
It was a lovely conversation. I didn't realize where time went. Good questions. It was lovely talking about some of these facets, John. Thank you.
And for all our viewers out there, Santhosh KC, head of ILI at Infosys, thank you so much. And stay tuned for our next episode in this leadership series. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.